I'm going to just look until I can see through her crotch. How many inches down is that? And it's 9. And I'm going to make my rise just a little bit longer than that so that she has a little bit of room to move. So, and I already measured the dress form a little bit ago, except I'm going to mess with my rise. Since I can't see the paper today, you'll tell me if I'm in a bad spot. Or maybe, yeah.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I'm going to say, I measured her rise is like 9, 9.5, but I'm going to say it's 10 so that she's got a little room. So we're going to do waist of 24, a full hip of 33, a rise of 10, and her out seam is going to be 38 inches. And just like starting with the sleeves, the bodice, and the skirt, we need our longest length and first. So we're going to start with our out seam. So if you look in this first diagram, diagram 119, we're going to start with a vertical line that's the whole length of our out seam, and then we're going to put horizontal lines at the top, at the bottom, perpendicular lines, and then this point C is how far down is the rise. So that's the first lines we're going to put in. And I'm going to give myself enough room to do the front and the back. And then when we make our pocket, I'm going to just chop this up into shorts, because we all can imagine what pants look like. So I want to go up 36 inches. I still show.
Yep.
I can't see myself today, so I'll probably drive everybody crazy. And my rise, I'm going to come down 10 inches. So hopefully a lot of this stuff in the book is starting to look familiar, the steps, and feel comfortable. So the top is my waist. That second line down is how far down till the sit bones are. I think there's a better word for those, but I call them sit bones. So we have A, C, and B. And C is going to be where the front crotch is. B will be where the hem is. Now the first thing we're going to do is draw the front waist, and we're going to let's see, divide the waist into fourths and go to the right from A, a quarter of the waist, and then we're going to go a half of an inch up. So a quarter of my waist is 6, so I'm going to go over 6 inches and up a half an inch. Now, if I knew I was going to put a pleat in this pant, if I was making a pleated front pant for a man or a woman, I would already figure out how wide is my pleat going to be, and I've got to add that to my waist. So if I wanted to make a 1-inch pleat with 2 inches of fabric, I'm going to come over 2 inches and add that amount in so that when I put my pleat in, I'm in the right size. So now we're going to connect. This is a stretch. I should have found a shorter dress one. Okay, so we've done the front waist. Now we're going to draw the front hip and the side of the leg. So we're going to next mark point F, which is 1/4 of the hip measurement to the right of C. And then we're going to mark point G in the middle of C and F. So of course, I have goofy math. I'm going to use my calculator on my phone. Rachel, what's 33 divided by 4? Oh, my calculator doesn't work. I'm going to go get a calculator. 33 divided by, oh, there it is.
8 1/4.
8 1/4. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome.
If we don't seem like super peppy today, it's because we're sore.
We drank this morning.
We did. We had Zima's for breakfast. I'm the new spokesperson for Zima.
It's nice and watery. Good for the morning.
It's good. I don't like strong beer.
He doesn't like beer at all.
I pretend it's beer.
You want to bust open a cold one? Got
Yeah.
some Zima.
So, okay, so we went 1/4 of the hip over. So C is going to be our front crotch. We went 1/4 of the hip over, and then we marked a spot in between that. So this spot in between, this is going to be the straight of grain of your pants. And we're going to mark that same spot below the pant leg. So I'm going to go over 4 and an 8. And then I'm going to connect. You need long rulers to make pants.
Unless you're short.
Unless you're short, yeah, right? I know our inseams are like 39 inches or more. Okay, so we did that. Now we're going to determine, here's one of the weird steps. We're going to figure out the pant hem circumference, and I usually just assume that like ladies' pants is like between 16 and 19, and most men's pants is between like 18 and 20, but 18 works for most everybody. So we're going to just use the example that's in the book. And what it has us do is take the circumference and then divide it in half, and then take away 1/2 of an inch. And that makes the front of the pant leg a little more straight at the sides. So if you think about that your butt is sticking out in the back, if you had the same hem in the front and back of your pants, the seam wouldn't be straight up and down. So our front pant hem is going to be 8.5 inches, and we're going to center that over point H. So we're going to go 4 1/4. So I'm actually going to be going on the outside of my construction lines, because I've measured a really, really skinny girl. So I'm going to go 4 1/4 on each side. So 8.5. So this is going to be this is my pant leg, and they're calling this B and J. Oh no, they're calling this I and J. A new addition is the train. We're closer to train. Okay, so we got a front pant hem. Now we are going to connect E to F with a slight curve, and then we're going to connect F down to the bottom of our hem with a straight line. So I'm going to connect this straight down. And then, I thought I hadn't plugged it. We thought we were going to have to do this in our dining room today, but this is working.
There's a cell tower on our
I
roof.
know, so we
just
have a
using
really good signal. Okay, that's done. Now we're going to draw in the front crotch here. And this is a chart similar to what we use for the booty short class. So if their hip is between 32 and 35, point K is going to be 1.5 inches to the left of C. And our hip is between 32 and 35, I think. Yeah, it's 33. And this curve, you want a nice tight curve that rejoins this front line. Just like that. Now it tells us to connect point K to L with a curve, and then from L to I with a straight line. Oh, and I should back up. L is the point between C and B. So L is between C and B. See, I've done this enough times that it just happens without any thinking. So I've got to read the instructions. So our pants are going to look a little bit different than the book. They're going to actually flare out from those initial lines. And then we're going to make this a slight curve up. And I've got a curved ruler with inch measurements on it. And I know that later on in the steps, I need to know how long is it from L to my front crotch. So I'm going to just use my ruler right now, 17, 14 1/4 is the length of that line. So again, this doesn't say it in the instructions right now, but later we want to know how long from L to this front crotch is, so I just went ahead and measured it now. Does anybody have questions about what we just did? Look how easy your pants. Isn't it nice that I saved this for the third day? We're going to move on to the back. No questions? People can still see it? I'm shocked how good the internet is here. That's good. Okay, now we're going to do the back. The book has you draft the back starting somewhere else on a brand new piece of paper. I like to just draft my back right next to my front starting from point F, and you'll see why in a little bit. what it does is it keeps the rise line lined up, just like when we did the ladies block, we were trying to keep the waist lined up. So this is easier. So let me tell you what the difference is. Their lines, so the front is alphabetical, ABC. The back, they're doing 1, 2, 3, and so on. They're 1 to 2, so the whole length of the pant is the rise. It's the out seam and rise, but here we added this 1/2 inch, so they're just having you add the 1/2 inch that we added here. Did that make sense to you, or did I describe that weird? That makes sense. Okay. So now, this line of my pants, and you don't have to butt right up to F, but you can work right next to it. So I'm going to make myself, I'm going to start my back a little bit further over, so I've got some room to work. And I just need to make it go up to this 1/2 inch spot up. So it's the rise plus a 1/2 inch is this next location. And that will be eventually the side seam of your pants. This is 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we are going to go 1/4 of the waist again to the right of the top and make a line. So actually, I'm going to make a horizontal line there. And 1/4 of my waist is 6 inches. I'm going to put a dart in the back of these pants so that you guys can see that at the same time. So 1/4 of my waist is 6 inches, but I'm going to put a 3/4 inch dart in it. So I'm going to go over 6 3/4 because the dart that I take away, I have to add in now. So I have 1/4 of my waist, which is 6, but she got a bubble butt, and I'm going to give her a little bit of a dart, even though this dress form doesn't have a butt at all. Okay, so, oh yeah, that works. That works. So now we're going to do the back hip, which was just like we did in the front hip, was 1/4 of our hip, but we need a little bit of ease in the pants. So instead of 8.5 inches, we're going to go 9.5 inches because we're going to build in some ease. And I pretty much stick with this extra inch unless they're like a teeny weeny kid. Like if their waist is less than 18, then just add maybe 3/4 or a 1/2 in this step where the book says to add a full inch. Now, if we flip to the next page, we're doing similar to what we did with the front. Now we're going to find the space between 3. Oh, I labeled my numbers wrong. 2 is at the bottom. We're going to find the space between those 2 points. And it is going to be about 4 3/4-ish of an inch. And then it wants me to find that same point at the bottom. Make another line. Now we're going to split our hem the same way we did the front, but in the front we took away 1/2 inch, and in the back we're going to add a 1/2 inch because we want the back pant leg to be a little bit bigger. So our 18-inch hem, divide that in half, is 9, but we're going to add a 1/2 inch. So our front is going to be 9.5 centered over the line. And actually, here it's ending up right on my line. So the points, 8 and 9, it might end up on 2 depending on your measurements. 8 and 9 can be outside of your original construction lines, or they can be inside of your original construction lines. But what's important is that the space between 8 and 9 is 9.5, is larger than the space between I and J, which is 8.5. So you want the back of your pants to be wider, so the side seam hangs nice. Okay, now let me find where we're at. There's a point 3 to 8 with a straight line. We did that because it's just my side seam. We didn't really change anything there. Then we are going to connect 5 and 9 with a broken line because we have to monkey with this line a little bit later to make the crotch fit and the inseam fit, and we'll explain that. So they just tell you to do this with a broken line because it's going to change. And then Point 11 is halfway between 5 and 9. So I'm going to measure between 5 and 9. There's a joke in there. 9 to 5, 5 to 9. Working 9 to 5. That's point 11. All right. Now, this is the next weird just because thing to do. We're going to locate point 12, 1/8 of the hip measurement to the right of 5. And this works whether it's man, woman, kid, adult, anybody. So I'm going to divide 33 divided by 8, 4 and an 8-ish. So that's going to be my point 12. Actually, there's a ruler I'm going to grab here in just a second. So this is going to become the spot to help us make our back crotch, but we're going to adjust it in a little bit. Okay, we're going to put that. Now we need to figure out point 10. Oh, I skipped point 10 altogether. Where it has you connect space 4 to 5 with a straight line, and then you go up an additional 2 inches, and what that does is it's going to make the seat, it's going to make the back seat of the pants higher, and then continue up 2 inches. Okay, so we're going to connect 4 to 5 with a straight line, and then go up 2 more inches. And what that does is it makes the seat of your pants higher so that they have room to go out over the butt without weird stuff happening. And then it has you connect 1 to 10 with a straight line. I disagree with that. So this is point 10 up here. I like to connect 1 to 10 with a little bit of a curve, because if you have curves in your pattern, it'll always look a little bit nicer. So we do that. Now, the next thing, let me make sure, connect point 4 to 12 with a shallow curve, connect 11 to 12 with a shallow curve. I'm going to go grab that other ruler real quick.
Okay.
Just think of a question, ask a question while I grab a better ruler, because I want to show you the difference in the curves. Oh, it's right there. This ruler was my grandmother's, and it was falling apart, so I had it remade in wood.
We should make more copies.
We should sell this ruler, yeah. So, the book makes kind of a musical theater pant where this curve is very shallow and it gives you more room across the butt, and they kind of look like train engineers' pants. I don't know how to describe it. A curve this shallow is great for the music man, but I like to use a curve that tightens out a little bit quicker. And this ruler was actually for making pointed collars in the 70s, but I like to use this curve, and you'll see that it looks more like the seat of a boughten pair of pants, whereas the curve that's drawn in the book gives you a little bit too much fabric in there. But that's also fabric you can take out in a fitting. So a curve kind of this shape seems to work better for pants. And if you have the multi-set of French curves, you'll find better curves. So you can see that, like in the book, the curve it's just a little bit too shallow for the modern man and woman. Okay, now if you look at this section, adjusting the inseam length, what it has us do is measure this section here. It has us measure the front crotch to see if when we put the back crotch in, that the inseam will actually line up. So I'm gonna tentatively in marker put in my back crotch. So this point L and point 11 is just halfway up from our hem to the rise. So if we put this in, we measured this part in the front, right, was 14 1/4 inches. So now if I measure up from there 14¼ inches, you'll see, and this shows it really well in the book, that you have to make a correction to the pattern before you're done. So what I've done now is I've measured up 14¼ inches, and I'm going to replace my curve to that part, and we're done with this original bit. So that's this is called truing it up, or some people call it walking the pattern together. Normally you, in some methods, you cut this all out and then you lay the pattern pieces together to see if indeed they fit. But since we know that this is halfway up our leg and this is halfway up our leg, and we need this to fit this, we're just doing it early. We've measured this line and we're just lowering the crotch until it's the same distance as the front. Any questions there yet? No? We're going to put the grain lines in, and then I'm going to show you this dart. So the grain line is just that center line that's already on the pant. And if you want to, if you know you're going to be sewing this together, now's a good time to put in a couple notches so that you know you're putting the right amount of fabric in the right places and that you don't stretch out a leg. So let's put the dart in now. Then we're going to make a pocket. So what it doesn't have in the book is I added a 3/4 inch dart into my pant because most people need a little bit of a dart in their butt. So what I'm going to do, so this line that's in the center of the pant that we've already got, you just kind of think of that curving up to your waist. And the dart is usually in purchased pants, it's either in the center of this space or slightly towards the back. You wouldn't put it towards the front anymore, but so I'm going to center mine. So I'm going to mark where the center of my waist is, and then I'm going to lay a nice curve up to, or down to this center line. We should be making ourselves pants. We can do it.
I can't find it.
No, we don't. The pants aren't long enough. I've given into just stretchy athletic shorts.
Now they stopped making the yoga pants too that are long. We can
What?
just surge those.
Oh. We need to make new pants. Then this dart, it's usually about 3 inches down, or if you want, you can divide this section, you can divide this spot kind of into thirds, and just say that you're going to put your dart in the top third. And then we have to redraw the waistline a little bit. So I'm just putting a little fitting dart in there so that it's a little more attractive. Then if I was to sew this together now, this top line doesn't line up. So I'm going to actually fold my dart closed. My dirt.
Dirt.
I love the new shot. I'm trying to make it not
I don't
line
feel
up.
claustrophobic.
I know, right? I'm not a good folder. I can't.
You can do it.
There. So this isn't a very good example of it.
How
but,
long is the dart?
I'll go back to that. So I'm just marking now. You probably can't see this, but you'll know in bottom patterns there's like weird little peaks and stuff in the dart. All I did was stitch my dart together and blend my waistline, and that gives me this peak that's at the top of most darts, if that looks familiar. So I put my dart, I guessed, between the rise and the waist, and this is just me. Different pattern makers have different way to figure it out. I just divide from the waist to the rise. I roughly divide it into thirds, and I just put the dart in the top third. But you want this dart to not go past the fullest part of their hips, and on this girl it's like 7 inches down. So there's the fullest part of my hip. So as long as my dart stays above the fullest part of their hip, it'll be fine. So the higher the dart, the more movement in the back of the pants. Okay, so let's kind of talk about this a little bit and then make a pocket. So I'm going to just make a pocket, and we're going to turn these into shorts. So I'm going to just make one side of my pants. So I'm going to just say my shorts are going to be this long. today. So, because we don't have a half-size pant dress for him. It's time to get
Oh
one.
yeah, we don't.
No. We have some weird. I should have used the kid.
The what?
I should have used the kid man.
Oh yeah, that's wrapped up like
Yeah,
a dead bug.
like a mummy. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of quickly redraw here. Am I in a good spot?
Question. So bigger butt, smaller dart?
Not necessarily, because the bigness of your butt is taken care of by the calculation we did with their full hip. So if you know their full hip, your butt should fit. This dart is just a little, use your discretion to decide. If you make the dart really wide at the top, you'll end up with a peak here at the bottom, and you might have to get rid of the peak in your pattern. But if you were making pants that have a side back, some really nice pants have a side back, you would just turn this dart into your side back and then make a center back and a side back. But for most people, a ½ inch is good. 3/4 might be a little bit much. So now, with all the slashing and spreading we've done on other things, I'm going to just draw myself a quick little pair of pants here. So there's my front. Here is my back of my pants. You know what? There's the back of my pants. So adding and subtracting fullness. Oh, my back doesn't look quite right. Adding and subtracting fullness to your pants is no different than when we added and subtracted to a skirt or added and subtracted to a sleeve. So I'm going to cut out my little miniature pair of pants. So this is my center back. Oh, we're going to put a fly on that too. I'm not going to sew a fly. That's a different class, but I'll show you the pieces you need to make a fly. And then everybody should get the Vogue sewing book if they haven't got the Vogue sewing book. It has the best directions to put in a fly that I've ever seen. And pictures. Okay, so if I now want to make bell to my pants, if I want to make them kind of 70s, I'm going to put a line where I want the bell to stop. And this, hopefully this just looks like old stuff to everybody. And I'm going to slice it into a T and then open it up. And then I just fill in the flare. So if I want to make flared pants, just draw wherever you want the flare to be and fan it out. So let's say actually, so everybody's good with that. I mean that should sound familiar. One person tell Rachel that sounds familiar. So we just added flare to our pants. So the more flare you add, the more flared your pants are. Now, I've seen a few of the catalogs are selling like a rehearsal skirt, which was popular in the 80s. So same thing. If you wanted to turn this item with a crotch into a skirt with a crotch, you just slash it wherever you want fullness to be, and then flare it out any amount that you want. So this would be how you make a skirt dress. And then I would just put the grain down the center. I would just kind of balance that out and put the grain down the center. So that's that. So that makes a skirt dress. I'll show you one more neat pant split, and then we're going to talk about flies. Let's talk about flies. Actually, I should have brought the garbage can over. I just put it on the floor. Nobody will know. So this shows, right? When I draw, this shows. So I'm going to do another drawing. So let's say I want to make harem pants, right? And I want poof that goes out and around the body. So if I want to make a pair of harem pants, I'm going to put my front and back together. And the first thing I'm going to decide is, where do I want the poof to be sewn to the pants? So if I want like a caterpillar, if I want poof, if I want poof the whole way down, I'm going to draw where I want my poof to be. Poof. And I'm going to make my puffs, that's a better word, my puffs are going to be longer at the top, and they're going to get shorter as I work the way down my pants. So the first thing you're going to do is on your original pant block is draw all your puff sections in. Draw your puffs to make poofs. Then you're going to come in now and put some sort of not super confusing notch system so that you can line everything up better later. So you want to pre-put your notches in. Then what you're going to do is retrace your poof sections. So this, I'm retracing my poof onto a clean piece of pattern paper. And the other thing you're going to figure out is, do you want poof at the inseam, or do you want just poof at the outseam? So if I don't want poof at the inseam, I'm not going to add anything to my inseam. That's a 0. But if I want a bit of poof at the outseam, let's say I'm going to add 2 inches, even though I'm working in miniature. So on your piece, before you spread it apart, you're going to mark that. And you're also going to put in this notch. Where does this notch line up? And then when you cut this out, is this a high? Does this look like this is a thing? Right? So I have the poofy part. So we're making pants that look like this. They're poofy as it goes down the leg, right? We're making these. And this is the same like we talked about sleeves the other day. So now, this amount that I added down at my side seam, when this is pushed up, that's what makes the poof. Then after I've done that is when I will go in and slash and spread. So if you want gathers at the waist, you're going to spread apart the waist. If you want the waist fitted in just the bottom of your poofy, then you're going to just fan out the bottom. So like that. So that would be the front section of my front poof to make harem pants or caterpillar pants. So you could put that poof anywhere you want. You could have your pants go all the way to below the knee and fan it out, gather it below the knee, and then make another little puff section below it. But that's kind of the idea. I love drawing poof. That's the idea to make a pair of pants like that. Does anybody have questions about what we just did? How this is like a sleeve and you can make poofed pants? Nope?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you talk about adding a gusset to these?
Oh, sure. So the nice thing about drafting your own pants, if your measurements are right, they should fit and people should be able to move. But if you want to add a little bit more movement, actually I'm going to draw this in little too. So you've got your pants, right? You have the front. Actually, I should draw that. So if you think about adding a gusset to a pant so people can move, you have the front of your pant and your side seam, and then you have the back of your pant, or the inseam. Here's our inseam, right? When you add a gusset to a pair of pants, usually people are putting in a long, skinny football shape that goes up the inseam and then back down. So you just add this shape into the pant itself. So to give them more movement across their crotch, you would make a gusset. You would just add like however much gusset you want, you just add it into the center back. So we're just making more room. So this will be wrinkly in their crotch, but it'll help them to move. So instead of a sewn-in gusset, it's just similar to the sleeve. We're just adding that much into the pant. And another place, if they need, if their pants are too tight across the vertical seam at their butt, the other direction in the back you can add is this way. So you can also add a little bit of gusset like that. And that's gonna, so all this extra that I've added in, that's gonna all not be so great looking when they're just standing there in a pair of pants, but when they're moving, it's gonna let them move. Did that kind of answer it? So it's similar to the sleeve. So we added a little bit in the inseam. We just took our gusset and sewed it together with marker instead of thread or paper or tape. And then we brought out just a little bit of the seat and put a little bit of a curve in there. That answered it. And it doesn't need to be super wide. Like if you just add 3/4 of an inch going away from the crotch and 3/4 of an inch kind of where the bottom or the apple of their butt is, we'll do it. I have seen some patterns where people put a gusset on the front and it does not look good. So don't add it. You can add it into the inseam in the front, but don't add it to the front of the crotch. It'll look like camel toes. Really pillowy camel toes. Okay, now we're going to make a fly. I'm going to show you kind of the pieces to make a fly. Fly is real easy. On most patterns, the width of the fly is the same or a smidge less as this distance. So where we went from C to, is this K? I should look. So this kind of width of the French. Oh no, did you make Facebook Live?
Are you?
I saw it on my phone.
You stumbled.
Hi, we're making a class.
You got sidetracked.
I got sidetracked. Okay, so we have point C and K in the front crotch. The fly is usually no wider than the distance between C and K. So up from my front, I'm going to pencil on the audience side of the fly and the inside of the fly. So that's 1.5 inches. So I'm going to come down from the top of my waist 1.5 inches and make a line. And then I'm going to curve that into the part where this C intersects my center front line. So that's kind of the shape of our fly on this side. And then if you want to make a fly that doesn't have an extra piece, there's a way you can make it with less pieces for the left side of a pair of men's pants.
Say goodbye to the Facebook.
Bye!
There's people watching.
There's people watching in the new shop.
I know, I'm showing that.
We'll show you on Friday. It'll be much cleaner. So now I just folded my center front line, and that mark that we just drew on the inside, I'm using my tracing wheel to move that line. So this, if we pencil this in now, has anybody made a lot of menswear? This is a nice way to pattern a fly. So we're not teaching you how to sew it today, but we may another day. This is how to pattern.
We have a question.
Yes.
You said the fly is another class. Would you be able to tell them if a button fly is wider?
A button fly is usually about the same size. If it's wider, the front will start to look thick and bulky. But if we cut this out now, then I can show you the pieces a little bit better and how they work. And actually, I need another copy of this piece. Some people, we'll make a fly live one day. Some pattern makers and sewers, when they pattern or cut a fly, they always cut like duplicates of the facing piece and duplicates of the interfacing, flipped both directions because they're never really sure which pieces they need until they go to sew it, and that works totally fine. But with this method, adding part of the folded back fly to the front, it's a little bit easier to figure out what pieces you actually need. And the Vogue sewing book, there's a bunch of different editions. They all have the same kind of stuff. Has really good pictures and directions for sewing a fly. And if you look at the steps to sewing it, it'll make the steps to patterning it make some more sense also. So I'm not even, we're going to say these are shorts. We're not even dealing with below the thigh, because we all know what pants are. We get pants. No dings from the Facebook Live. People aren't commenting.
People, yeah, we got a comment during the video.
What?
How exciting! Really.
Thrilling.
I'm gonna put a GoPro on myself for a whole day and go
For
live.
live cleaning.
I think it'd be good. It'd be popular.
So now, of course, somewhere I retraced this piece of my fly, and I don't know where I retraced it. Okay, so the other thing we need is another copy of just this part of the fly. So just this additional lap, we need a copy of that. So I'm going to trace that right now. And then I can kind of explain the pieces, and then we'll just go home and sew a bunch of flies. We even have a couple rulers that are the shape of a fly, so you don't even have, you just lay the ruler on your pattern and then go. Okay, let me cut this out, and then we're going to deal with a pocket. What time is it?
4:19.
Oh, good. We're going to get, I think, through everything I hope to. Do I have too much stuff up here?
It's not in view.
What?
It's not in view.
Okay, so let's look at the fly first, and then we'll deal with what are the pieces that make a pocket. And I think I'll just sew in the pocket in the front of a pants, but we don't need to see the back. So the pieces of a fly are, if this was my pants, this is the part of the pant that's covering up the zipper. Is it help if I hold it here? Is that weird?
Yeah, put it on your head.
Right? So if this was, if these pants were going on me, this piece, this additional piece, will get interfaced and folded back, right? And that's going to cover up the zipper. Then this extra piece, this is going to go on the other side, and that's what's going to be the backing of my zipper, so that my zipper is hidden in there and so that it's not pinching my skin. But definitely get a sewing book if you're interested in flies, because once you see the steps to sewing it together, that business will make more sense. And you can pattern it without this extra piece, but then what happens is you end up having this piece anyway and a seam, and then you end up with this really thick thing in the front. So you're able to do it without this being super duper thick. Then if you were making this a button fly, you would have the same kind of pieces.
You have light bulbs.
Light bulb, yeah. It's the same kind of pieces. You would just put buttonholes and buttons on it instead of a zipper. And then what's handy when you see this, the fold back or this additional fly, this would be called like the reveal or the facing. This would be the reveal. This would be the facing. This part on the pattern is really integral when you're sewing in a fly, and this is that part where you make a clip to sew the rest of your crotch inseam in. So that's why, if you even don't have that part on your pattern, that's why there's always a clip or a notch right there. Yeah, cool. We're good with that. Let's make a pocket. There's all kinds of pockets. We're just going to make a pocket that's inserted into the side. And the first thing that you do is trace what you want the opening of your pocket to be. So we're going to go step by step through this. Somebody making weird noises in the hallway. So the shape of your pocket is up to you, and the size of it is up to you. I'm just showing you what the pieces are. So I'm going to first draw a line that is where my hand can go into the pants. So this first line I'm drawing is, where is the opening in the pants? The next line I'm going to draw is how much room do we want down into the pocket. So I'm going to draw that in blue. So now I'm going to draw what is the largest size of my pocket. Is it for a pair of keys? It's not for an iPhone 6.
Bigger than lady pockets normally are.
Really? These
They're
are
always sewing shut,
these
too.
are so good.
They're just fake.
Some good lady pockets. Now we're going to have to retrace this a couple times to manufacture all the other pieces that go into a pocket. But what I've done on my original is, here's the opening, and here's the full size of the lining. So the first thing I'm going to do is retrace this entire shape and cut it out.
Let's make our own pants.
Let's do it next week.
Big pocket.
And I'm going to give myself a couple notches right now. Does the blue show up?
Yeah.
Does the blue line? Okay. So I'm going to retrace the biggest part of what I just drew. So this line, this blue line would be kind of where your lining ends. And then I also want to know, where will the fabric that's backing my pocket, where does that line happen? So I'm going to draw that in now too, and I'm going to give that a notch, because I think notches are great. But don't over notch it, that's annoying. Right? When there's too many notches.
I mean, on a
like,
line like that.
Yeah.
When you're making a
Yeah.
dragon head.
When you're making a dragon head, use lots of notches. When you're making a pocket, use one. Okay. So the next thing that is happening here. Oh.
Did you break?
I can't drop as much stuff now that we have cement floors. So now I want to know where those same parts are, but I'm going to cut out on my main pattern piece where the hand is going in the pocket hole. Okay. So now what I have is this for my hand to go in. Then I've got the backing or the face part of my pocket. So if I'm cutting my pocket in lining, you can decide, you have choices here. You can make the lining, some garments, the lining shows in the pocket like a different color, or sometimes, and most commonly, this is the same as your fashion fabric. But if I cut my fashion fabric just to this same edge, it's going to show and you're going to see the lining. So the easiest way to deal with this next pocket step is to just make it bigger. So the part of our pocket that's going to be fashion needs to now be bigger than my lining. So now what I've got is I have fashion fabric going beyond where I can see, so that when I'm putting my hands in my pocket or my iPhone 7 Plus, oh, I have a 7 now.
Sponsored by Apple.
Sponsored by Apple. So now all I've done is just, I've kind of masked it. Like if you think of masking backstage, I've just brought more fashion past where we can see in the pocket. So now we have the back part of our pocket, but what we're missing now is the rest of the bag. We're missing part of the bag of our pocket. And that comes from just retracing this original section without the part we cut off. So now we've cut this off, we've got our backing, and now we just need to retrace just this part of the pocket. Anybody lost yet? Everybody's good? Everybody's good? So I'm going to retrace that part. And then I'm actually going to sew this together because it helps. So you can interface things in pockets. You can do all sorts of nice. You can. I'll show you another one here in just a second that you've probably seen a lot in men's pants. I like my notches. Oh, I didn't draw them on anything else though. I didn't put my notches on this piece. I'm only human, you guys. I only learned to do this because I had a teacher that struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled with making pockets. She'd go get every pattern out of the pattern drawer, and you'd get this Frankenstein pocket that made no sense with what the pants actually did. So I said, I'm going to figure this out. Oh, I cut the wrong thing. Do you know where the tape is? Look, I wasn't supposed to cut that. I was supposed to cut this. There we go.
That was not
See,
Facebook
I
Live.
was saying something negative, and then no, it wasn't negative.
He had a
It's
drink
just,
this morning.
it's just she couldn't do it, and I was always the person that had to sew everything together.
Well, I mean, you messing up with the tape. I didn't mean that.
Oh,
But yeah, that too.
Oh, that too. Okay, so now we'll get some of this extra paper out of the way. So now, if we look at all of our pieces, let me make this one green. And I'm going to sew this because I think we have time. So now I have my original pair of pants with the piece that we cut out. We drew where we want our pocket opening to be and cut this off because we don't need it anymore. I have the backing, the facing or the masking part of my pocket, but I still don't have a pocket yet because I need to add this piece in now to finish making the bag of my pocket so that back here I have lining, and on this side we're not stitching in the pocket. If you were making like a kid's play suit or scrubs, you take away this piece and just stitch your pocket backing right to the garment, but that stitch will show. So if you don't want this stitch to show here, you need to make another lining piece. And I'm going to sew this together here really, really quick. Does anybody have questions about that much, like why we made these pieces for this pocket? And I'm going to show you an even quicker way to do the same thing. No questions on that? No questions on that? While I've got paper up here, before I put fabric up here, they're going to be a hideous pair of shorts. An even quicker and factory kind of style to make a pocket is to just take a chunk of patterning paper, fold it, put a fold. Then your fold now you have all your lining accomplished, right? Maybe I should make this one. No, I'll make the other one. So see what I've done is I put a piece of paper with a fold kind of where I want my pocket to be. And then I'm going to still mark the outside, the outermost part of my pant block.
Sounds like you're quacking.
I'm quacking, I know, right? Okay, so now you can just assign whatever amount of bottom of pocket you want. I almost cut my finger. See what we did here? How slick is that? So now I have a pocket that's like this. This is all lining. This is my fold. Then I'm going to just slap some fashion fabric here.
That doesn't show.
Like that. That doesn't show. Then I'm going to slap some fashion fabric here.
There we go.
That shows. Aha! I've saved some time. So now that's an even quicker pocket. I put the lining on the fold, and then I just stick a chunk of fashion fabric on there and go. And like if you look at H&M pants versus pants at Neiman Marcus, a pair of H&M pants, they will just put a line. Should we do the H&M one? We'll do Neiman Marcus. H&M pants just put a line in a seam like this, and they stick their fashion there, just a straight line, it's easier to sew. Then they have their lining chunk, fold that over, and stick it into the pants. It's fun, it's like an engineering project. Okay, so I'm going to cut out the first pocket we did, because it'll be easier to see the steps on that. Let me tidy up my work. I don't need that, I don't need that. While I'm cutting this out, it's a good time for some questions about pants. Because after this, we're gonna move on. And only a couple people didn't take the skirts class, so we're gonna send you the segment in the skirt video from what we could cover today, because I think we're gonna use our time better turning a bodice and a skirt into a dress. Okay, so. And you would interface some of this stuff that I'm not going to interface. It's so great. He just told us stuff and it made no sense. I'm going to cut out I'm not going to put a fly on this because we're just making a pocket. And I'm just going to eyeball on a 1/2 inch seam allowance on all this stuff. So, no questions, no questions. It must just make so much sense. Pants are fun. Everybody makes some pants. Okay. So we're going to make pink pants with blue striped lining. They're going to be awful. So I'm going to line my green line up. So I'm going to cut out the front of my pant.
Now we have one.
Yeah. And I'm just eyeballing a 1/2 inch for speed today.
Which parts do you interface?
I interface the back side of the fashion. So this is the part that's the audience side. I like to cut a piece of interfacing here, sometimes on the bias, and pink the low edge of it. So I interface like 1 inch or 1.5 inches of that part of the opening. Then I also like to interface this part that's going to be fashion. I like to interface the back of that. And then our lining pieces, they just stay flimsy lining.
And then one other one. Any advice on waistbands?
Waistband, you can get pre-made pant waistbanding, but really it's no different than a waistband on a skirt. And your over and underlap is just in the front of your pants instead of in the back or side of your skirt. And it's just a rectangle, or if you want to make it really nice, you can make a curved waistband. You know, you can draft it more like a boss or a yoke. Okay, so I have this is fashion.
This is some nice.
What?
This is gonna be nice.
These pants, they're gonna be beautiful. Now this is the part that's gonna back the fashion. I picked colors that are horrible, so they show.
It's what we had available.
Yeah, it's what was out of a bin. I like my notches. And we'll look at these pieces before I sew them together. I'm going to have to thread the sewing machine. We just dug out a sewing machine too. Now let me get some blue stripy stuff. This is not what I would line every pair of pants in, but it's kind of fun. So now I need this piece. And actually, I'm going to treat this like the one that was kind of on the fold. I'm going to just stick my pieces together. And I'm eyeballing a 1/2 inch, so you'll do this much nicer. But for the sake of speed, I didn't thread the sewing machine. I can do it. I can do it.
You want me to do it? Oh.
Nah, I'll do it. You grab the camera, and I'll meet you over there. I did get a chair.
Green thread.
Green thread, white bobbin.
Fantastic.
Pink
pair of
pants.
shorts.
But it'll be good to see all this put together. Huh?
Nothing.
I did find some needles on the floor in case my needle broke. We just got a serger this week that serges vinyl. I'm super
It's
excited.
so hardcore looking. It's green.
Somebody had to quick move to Bulgaria overnight, so I got a serger at a hell of a deal. I paid only what the table was worth, so the serger was free. Okay, so the pieces of this, the first thing I'm going to do is insert my kind of the facing or the masking part of my pocket. This is not going to go well because I did not do a nice seam on. I'll fake it. I'll fake it. I wonder how much bobbin is in there. Something crunchy, you know, we just moved. So, now, it just came unthreaded. Keep sewing, keep sewing. Oh, I got bobbiner. I just won't show anything.
Yeah.
And I'm a little
Ooh.
crooked. I'm a little crooked, so I'm going to just straighten it out. So now we have that part of the pocket, and then we have this part of the pocket, and then we have this part of the pocket is going to cover, I think I put my curved part in backwards. But do you think I even need to sew the rest of that? Does that make sense? Somebody give Rachel a thumbs up, if that, just so that the pieces make sense. Just because my sewing machine's screwy.
Perfect.
That makes sense?
Got it. Thumbs
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Put the camera down here one more time, and then I'll just talk about.
Downward.
Or just you can see this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the part that's cut out of my pocket, right? And it's cut to go further over, and then I just took my two lining pieces and put them on the fold, so that when it's all together, here, my seam allowance is terrible. When it's all together, you don't see this back side of the pocket. And then the last thing you would do is just sew across the bottom so that you can actually put your hand in there. And that's a pocket. Oh, I sewed it to the wrong edge. That was my problem. But as long as that makes sense, we're going to move on. So while I get reset up, ask any questions about this. And I'm going to go through... I'm gonna redo a skirt body block, so this might be old for some of you, but not all of you, but I'm gonna do it kind of fast. And then I'm gonna make a top, and I'm gonna just combine the two of them into a pattern. So let's get some more room here.
How does the edge of the top fashion fabric get finished?
How does the edge of the top fashion fabric get finished?
Where it comes up to the pocket.
This part, do you mean like here?
I think she moves this to the pocket.
Here. So that gets sewn to your lining like this, and then you would understitch it, and then when this flips over, now you have nice lining here and then the fashion behind it. Did that answer it?
Or was that what you were talking about?
Was that what you were talking about? I just assumed that's what you were meaning. Yeah. So, I mean, you can even make this more, what's a step above Neiman Marcus? You could make this a super fancy pocket. You could make this a Saks Fifth Avenue pocket. So now I'm looking at my lining, right? You could even make a small facing on this side of the lining with fashion. So we're saying that again is fashion. So now, when you stick your hand in your pocket and a little bit of it shows over, you have fashion showing there also, instead of this going right to lining behind the pocket. Yeah? Yeah? Okay, skirts. I'm going to make a knee-length skirt, but this is a good one for review. And then we're going to review a bodice again, with the adjustment that we do where we make the waist line up. And then I'm going to just show you the basics of sticking a skirt on a bodice. And then it becomes a dress. What time is it? I want to make sure.
4:41.
We have enough time. Here comes the train. Okay. So I already measured my skirt. And for those that didn't do the skirt class, we're going to harness that part of the recording out and send it to you because it's good info, and it will seem like I'm doing some of this a little bit too fast. Oh, 2 trains. There's a big train. Okay, so the skirt block is going to be the height. It wants to know my waist to floor in the front and my waist to floor in the back, but I'm only going to pattern my girl to the knee, and her waist to knee in the front is 23, and I'm going to say her waist to knee in back is 23 and a half. This must be rush hour time.
Does that Amtrak go by here?
I think that's just Metra. Oh no, that Amtrak goes by. I bet that was the Amtrak train. Amtrak, Metra, and L train. Okay, so let's make a skirt block. What it wants, so this is page 149, and this is review for a lot of you. It wants to know the front waist and the back waist, and the front hip and the back hip, And then it asks for this odd measurement, the distance between the shoulder blades. Like if you think of a girl's shoulder blades or a man's shoulder blades, it just wants to know kind of what the gap is. And that gap is just an arbitrary place to put a dart in the skirt. So let's start. We are going to draw a rectangle that's the longest skirt length, so our waist to knee at the back is longer. So my rectangle is going to be 23.5 inches tall. And then the width of my rectangle is going to be half of my front width, or half of my front waist hip. Let me say that again. It's so confusing. The width of my skirt block is half of my front hip plus half of my back hip, because the hip is the wider thing, and then we're going to take away to the waist. It's because I was thinking about trains.
It's still because he had a drink this morning.
I did. We had Zima for breakfast. We walked by a cop car drinking on the street.
He had an open container.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
There's cops everywhere because Ron Emanuel lives by our shop.
Yeah, the mayor is like 2 doors down from our studio.
The cops sleep in their cars, watching his home.
Does the train pick up really loud on there? Does the train pick up super loud or just a little loud?
No.
Moderately loud. At least it's clearer today. Holy moly. Okay, so now I have to figure out what half of my front hip is plus half of my back hip. My front hip is 17, so half of that is 8.5, right? And then half of my front is 16.5, so that's 8.25. If my math is wrong, you'll know and sort that out later. So 16.75 is the maximum width of my skirt block. And you can do this down to the floor, down to the knee, down to the calf, wherever you want to. But we're gonna make a knee-length dress pattern. So that's that line. And this is all straight out of the book. So I'm not even going to read each step, but you can follow along. You've got these pages. So that's A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D. Now, the next vertical line, I'm going to come over half of my back full hip. So half of my back full hip is 8.25. Oh, this ruler's almost 8.25. So your rectangles won't necessarily be the same width on this. And if you just have the person's full waist and full hip, you can just divide it in half and make the same amount in the front and back. Okay, so this is point G in H. Now, it also asks for the hip depth. How far down from the waist is the full part of her hip? And I measured it in the back, and it's 7 inches. So it's not the same as the rise. This is just where the full part of her butt is. And this is E, F, and I. Okay. Now the next point that we're going to put in is K and J. And we figured these out by dividing the front waist in half, and then we are going to also take the difference. So we measured her front waist to knee and her back waist to knee. Her back waist to knee was a ½ an inch longer than the front. So I'm going to start on the front top right of my block by lowering her skirt front a ½ an inch so that my hem is right in the front and in the back. Okay. Now, so that's point J. Now we're going to do K is 1/2 of the front waistline, and I measured my front waistline at 12. So I'm going to go over just 6 inches. And this is going to be a curve up to there. So this is making the back of our skirt a little bit higher, but not as much as pants because it's not tight underneath her butt, hopefully. And then we can go ahead and connect K to I with a curved line. So just think of kind of what the shape of a hip is. So we're going to connect K to I to there. And then we are going to put, we're going to do a little bit of work on the back. And let's see. I want to put in P and Q, but I don't want to put them in out of order. But I don't see where it says to put in P and Q. We'll find it. Oh, it's in step 5. We'll do that later. Okay, so now we're going to do step 4, draw the skirt back. To the right of point A, we're going to locate L at half of this weird measurement, the shoulder blade width, and it's the distance kind of between like the points of her shoulder blade. And I pretended on the dress form that her shoulder blade width was 4 inches. So I'm going to start 2 inches to the right of L, because we divided it in half, and I'm going to put a mark, or to the right of A. 2 inches to the right of A is point L, and that's half of her shoulder blade width. Now we're going to go below L and put in point M. It's whatever this distance is, whatever the distance from A to L is, plus a full inch. So if I was doing this for a teeny weeny person, I would only go over probably about a half of an inch. But an inch would still work. Now we're going to do some weird math where we fold a piece of paper. So not even math, we're just going to use a piece of paper to divide something. Now we're going to determine points N and O. So we're going to subtract half of the back waist measurement from half of the back hip measurement. So we're going to fitting the waist into the hip. So my half of my back waist is 5.5. I got to write this down. And half of my back hip is 8.25. Oh, I need the calculator. So I'm going to subtract 5.5. Did you just get a message? Was somebody not able to log in? Or I might not be reading a message right.
Through the Facebook page?
Yeah. No? We must be good then. I'm going to read this really quick.
I didn't get it.
Oh, no, it's not. Okay. So what was the difference? 2 3/4? Look, I'm off like 2 3/4. So I'm going to mark on my strip 2 3/4 of an inch because it's easier to just fold this strip up than it is to do weird math. So I've got a strip of paper that's 2 3/4, and this is going to help us determine N and O. Now we're going to fold this strip into 3 parts, and N is going to be to the right of L 1/3. So we're going to mark that down. Did I do this right? Subtract 1/2 of the back waist measurement from 1/2 of the back hip measurement. Cut a strip of paper that size and 1/2 inch wide. So we're going to come over here and mark 1/3 of that there at the top. Okay, so that's going to be N. Then we are going to mark, 2/3, hang on. N is 2/3 to the right of L. Now it looks right. I bet everybody's really annoyed with me. This section right above step 5, just read it through, and it's one of those odd just because ones, and it's just because somebody has figured out that it works. So I'm taking away, so we're figuring out what's the leftover, or how much smaller is the waist in the back than the hip in the back, and this is kind of the principle behind making a boss. We took out 2/3 of that is going to be taken out in a dart, and the other third is going to be taken out at the side seam. So that's what we're going to mark in now. So the 1/3 of the difference is taken out here. The people that didn't do the gored skirt class are probably like, what is going on? And everybody else is like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now we're going to put in points P and Q which are 1.5 inches on either side of H. So I'm going to put in points P and Q. PHQ, I almost spelled something. And then that's going to connect up with a straight line. And then I'll just do the further developments quick that are on the next page. So the next thing it wants us to do is draw a line straight below this dart, because we're going to cut the dart and cut this line and fold that together. And I need to cut this out before I do the next adjustment. Let's see. I keep thinking I'm going to cut through the computer cord.
$75.
I know. I worked with a lady one summer when people still carried around Walkmans, and she would cut through a headphone cord every week with a rotary cutter. People would just give her boxes of cheap headphones from the dollar store. She was so into her tunes, she was never paying attention to what was going on. So the first thing I'm going to do to finish the development of this skirt block, and there's very good visuals in the book, is I'm going to retrace the front section, or the back section, whichever one you want. I'm going to retrace the back section. So I need a copy. So you can see here what's weird here is that the front side seam of your skirt surpasses the back side seam of your skirt in your pattern. If you wanted, you could pattern your block with a 3-inch gap between the front, deal with the front, deal with the back. Then you don't have this issue where you have to retrace either the front or the back. But I'm going to retrace my back. Quickly. With my primitive weights here. Our weights are in a box. Everybody commented
It's the heaviest
on how
box.
heavy it was. So I want to know where my dart is. I got my hem. So the left of this is our center back. And I'm gonna deal with finishing the back here. It's covered in notes. So to finish the development of the back, we're going to cut the dart out. Did we get tape? We didn't get tape. Do you want to go? Oh, she got tape. That's great. We're going to cut the dart out. Then, to get the right amount of swing, we're going to slice up to the dart and close the dart. So our back is done. Got to fill that in with paper. Then, to finish the front, I'm going to cut out the front. And I am going to make a mark that's about 3.5 inches over from the center front. And that's point R. This isn't right in the book. The letters are off. And then I'm going to go on my hip line and go in a little bit less than that. So if I went 3.5 inches there, I'm going to do about 3 inches there. And this doesn't really change based on the size. If you have a teeny weeny kid, come over a little bit less. Then I'm going to walk this point together from my hip up to my waist and see what the difference is. So my front is a little bit longer than the back. So what we're going to do is slice. So my difference is like 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to slice a dart into those 2 points that are at the top of page 151. And then that amount that it was too long, my front was a little bit too long, I'm going to just close that at the side. So I'm opening a dart, and I'm getting rid of the extra that I had going on in my front. Then, just like we closed the dart in the back, we're going to do the same thing. So we added this dart only to figure out that we need to slice that close this dart, and then that gives us a nice amount of swing for the front of the dress. So for the few of you that this was brand new, did that kind of make sense looking along with the book, or are you like completely screaming lost? Okay.
Yes, it made sense.
That made sense. Okay, so now I have my new good front. So this is my center front, and this is my center back. And now I am going to, for review, make another lady's body block where the waist is lined up. So I'm going to do that next. And then we're going to marry them together into a dress pattern, which for those that did booty shorts, it'll be kind of familiar. Or no, the leotard 2 class. It'll look kind of familiar. What's the time? What's the time?
5.
Oh, we have plenty of time. Okay, so now I am going to make a lady's body block. And I've already done my measurements, so we don't need to review that because it's in the book. But I'm going to line my waist up because it's easier for me to work with the waist lined up. And I'm going to leave a gap between the front and back of my body block. So my girl is going to get a 1/2 inch bust dart. And she is going to get a 1 inch waist dart. And I already know that from my chart in the book. So my back neck to waist for the front is going to be my back neck to waist plus the bust dart height. So my front box is going to be 15.5 inches tall because my back neck to waist is only 15. And I'm going to put a little bit of ease into my bust also. So my bust was 32, so I'm going to add a 1/2 inch of ease to my bust. So I am going to take 32.5. I almost typed in my passcode. Somebody would have that on camera. So 1/2 of that is 16.25. So the width of my 2 boxes are going to be 16.25. So that's actually half my bust. So my boxes are 8 and an 8 each because we're separating it from the front. We're separating the front from the back. So 8 and an 8. And then I'm going to leave a few inches gap because I like to leave a few inches. And then we're going to go 8 and an 8. So my back box doesn't need the addition of the bust dart. So my back box is going to be just 15 inches, where my front box was 15.5 because I added the bust dart to the height. Rachel, will you divide 15 by 4?
$3.75.
So now I'm going to go down separately. I can't go all the way across the front and back now. So I'm going to go down 3 3/4. That's going to be your front width line. And I'm going to go down another 3 3/4. That's going to be our armpit. 3 3/4. 3 3/4. My back neck, I'm going to go over 2.5 and up a half. And put a curve there. My front neck, I'm going to go over 3 and up a half. Make a 3-inch square box. I don't even need to make the box because I know what my neck is like. I'm going to go down from this top line 1 inch and 3/8, and that's one of those just because measurements. I decided that her shoulder is 4 1/4 inches. It's different every time. So I'm putting a 0 at the top of my neck and going down until I hit her shoulder. And I'm going to make a little bit of a right angle right there. Then I'm going to look at my front width and divide it in half. So my front width is 11. So I'm going to go over 5.5 inches. And then I'm going to connect all of this business together. And I'm straying a little bit from the ruler, only because I know what I want a beautiful armhole to look like. Now we're going to put in the bust dart, so we're going to go half of the distance from her point to point. So her point to point is 6.5, so I'm going to go in 3 1/4. So just assume every measurement's probably divided in half if you're not sure. And then her shoulder to point was 8.5. So I'm going to go from the center of her shoulder down to the line that tells us how far apart her nipples are. So that's her nipple. So I'm going to go to the left 1/2 of an inch and make a mark, and also a faint line. Then I'm going to go down below her nipple 1 inch and make a mark. Now I'm going to put in my waist dart, which is 1 inch. So I've got my waist dart in. Now she's getting a 1/2 inch bust dart today. So this line that's straight across from the nipple, we're going to go down the whole dart measurement. So her whole bust dart's 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go down 1/2 inch. But then I'm going to center the dart on each side of that mark. And this should pretty much be review. So I'm measuring my top line of my dart is 4.5. So then I want my bottom line to only be 4.5. All right. Now we're going to divide her waist into 4. So her waist is 24, so we've got 6 inches. And we're going to figure out the front waistline. So I have my 6 inches, plus we have to add the dart, makes 7 inches. And we're scooting the waistline 1/4 inch towards the back just because it looks nice. So I've got my front waist in. Okay, we've got our back neck in, so we're going to do our back armhole and our back shoulder. My crossed back was 12 inches. And on most people, the across back is bigger, even on women. Because it's not right across the bust, it's more across your shoulder. And I'm going to go up 3 inches just because. And I'm going to make my back shoulder 1/2 inch longer than my front shoulder, because that'll all ease in beautifully. And then I'm going to try to connect all of these points. And again, if you find that, say, your ruler says it goes all the way to there, but you feel that this is a better curve, then draw them both and then split the difference. And you're generally going to have a nicer fit. Instead of going an extreme either way, instead of going right where you think the ruler is or right where you think it is, if you go in the middle, you'll usually come out a little bit better off. So now we're going to put in the back waist. And we haven't put the dart in yet, so we have to remember that there's a dart. So we're going to go 6 inches plus 1 inch because of our dart, plus the minus the 1/4 of an inch. So in the front we added 1/4, in the back we took away 1/4. Now we're going to go up to her armpit. Then we're going to divide the back waist in half and go about 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch to the left of that point. And we're going to complete the last dart for the buyer. Voila! So that should be reviewed. Does anybody have questions on a step of that, or have you tried it and there's a step that you get stuck with? And I'm going to put a dart in the shoulder. Now's the time to speak up. No, nothing at all. Okay. So if you want to put a dart in the back, you go down to this width line and you just put in a dart. Like that, and like that. Okay, I'll review. What time is it?
5:07.
5:07. So now, let's make this into a very simple 1940s dress. Yeah. Oh yeah.
The only thing I get stuck on is the back armhole is too big on the male bodice I made, which you told me to check measurements for.
So, is it too big this way? Just give me a yes or no.
Yeah.
If it's too big this way, it means you're probably not dividing something correctly when you do your fourths. or you're measuring their waist to where their pants are or where their high hip is. Like generally, if you've got the center back, that little bump in their neck to where their natural waist is, and everybody's natural waist is usually higher than you think, this should come out right unless your person has itsy bitsy arms. Then if your guy's got itsy bitsy arms, all you need to do is raise the armhole up. And that should take care of the problem. The other thing you can do is in your measurements, measure from their armpit. Stick a measuring tape kind of up in their armpit and figure out how far from their armpit to their waist it is. Then you could come up from your waistline, whatever that measurement is, make a mark. And then, because you wouldn't want it to be completely up in their armpit, come a little bit down from that spot and then make your armhole. But it should, if your measurements are good, this should just work perfect for a man. Does that answer it? Yep. Oh, good. A couple people had that question. That's great. Okay, so let's make this into a 1940s women's dress that has a Peter Pan collar that stands up from the neck, has a front princess seam, has a back fitted yoke with no dart, and a pleat at the back of her center back. So that's the dress we're going to make using the body block we've got now, our skirt block that we've got, and what we did last time with collars. So the first thing I like to do before I go to town, the blue shows up, the blue shows up. Before I commit to anything, I like to just kind of start penciling in what my style is, what I think my style is going to be. And then I also like to make some notes, like I'm going to write pleat. I want a pleat that starts back there. And I'm going to even mark where I don't want my pleat to go below her waist, so I'm going to mark a spot above the waist. And I want my pleat to hook into my yoke. So this is going to be my yoke up here. And I'm going to get rid of this dart. So I'm going to make myself a note too that I'm going to get rid of that dart. Then I'm also going to remind myself that I'm going to get rid of this dart and that I'm going to kind of pencil on my Peter Pan collar. And how does she get into this? It's going to button the whole way down the front. So I'm penciling in my collar a little bit longer than I want it to, because when I take away this outside edge, it's going to crawl up her body. So I'm going to kind of pencil in my collar. And then I do know that I need I need a button lamp. So I'm going to come over here, and since this is a petite lady, I'm going to just give her a 1/2 inch button lamp. So before I even cut this apart, there's some stuff I can do. Instead of taping on paper later, I'm going to put her button lamp in right now. So the original line on my body block is my center front. Okay? Then we've added a button lamp. And I'm going to make the top of my button lamp curve into her dress real nice. But as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, you know what? Let's not make it all the way up to her neck. Let's make it a little bit away from her neck. So I'm going to come and I'm going to enlarge her neck opening about 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to do the same enlargement in the back. So in my little 40s dress with a princess seam in the front, a yoke in the back, and a pleat, and a Peter Pan collar that stands up, I'm making her neck a little bit bigger. So now I'm going to make a nice little curve for my button lamp. And I don't want the collar to surpass the center front. I want it to just stop at the center front. So now I'm going to free this from the paper. I keep putting the Sharpie lid on the pencil. Usually when we're done, I leave like 5 Sharpies without lids on them, and then we find them. I find them. I should have Zima every day. We filled the fridge with it, so anybody that comes and visits, well, I did. I filled the fridge with Zima. So now I'm going to free my front and back from the paper. And then I'm going to address the piece is that we're going to need to retrace some of this. So that's the next thing I'm going to address. Because I don't want to chop up everything unless I have to, right? And I think we're going to start with our little Peter Pan collar. Maybe we'll sew this tomorrow and put it on the dress form, because I think it's really cute. Why don't we do this class with our measurements each time?
I was just going to say, I could use a dress too.
We'll make a dress. Okay, so now I'm going to put my collar together. I'm imagining my shoulders together, and I'm going to get rid of this little bit of dart, even though I kind of chopped my neck off without the dart. So I can do the yoke next, actually. So I'm going to take a nice ruler, and I'm going to cut off my yoke, but I want to put a notch where my yoke is going to match to. Because if you have a notch now, I'm going to make my yoke really nice. I'm going to make it dip down a little bit at the back. And then I'm going to angle it up a little bit to the armhole. And I don't want this fitting dart in my yoke anymore. So I'm going to get rid of that. Voila. So it made my yoke even a little more curved in a good way. Right. Now, I don't want this dart in the back of my dress, but we're going to have a pleat back here. So I am going to take away, I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to take some of my dart away at the side seam, and I'm going to take some of my dart away at the center back. So my inch dart, because I don't want a dart in my dress pattern. Dirt. I'm going to take away part of my dart at the side, and then I'm going to take away part of my dart on the other side. And here I'm going to fudge it, because we're going to put a pleat in here, which is going to give a little bit of room. But instead of taking away my dart just to this line, I'm going to sneak it all the way up to there, because the pleat is going to make this work again. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So we have our back yoke, and we no longer have this dart. But I said we're putting a pleat in here. So all I'm going to do is take a piece of paper and put a fold in it. And I'm going to lay my pattern piece, and I'm just deciding how much fabric do I want underneath, right? So I am now going to put a piece of tape on this side to hold it down, and I'm going to cut out my pleat. We're making a big box pleat. I'm cutting across the tape that's holding it down. So before I pick this up from the table, I want to retape over this edge. There. So now I've got my pleat. And I'll mark some of this in Sharpie so it shows up nice. How are we on time?
5:16.
Oh, we've got plenty of time. I can slow down, drag this out. So this is my original center back, and this is the fold. This is the fold of my pleat in the back of my. She wears this to Tupperware parties. No, she wears this to put plastic on furniture in her relative's house. She doesn't like to go over and sit on fabric. So now I've got this great pleat that's in the center back of my bodice, and it's going to go onto a yoke. And this is cool. Check this out. This helps. This is like a reminder of the dart manipulation. Wherever a dart closes, a dart opens, right? By closing this shoulder dart, we've actually opened a dart here, which is why it's still going to fit exactly the same. Fascinating stuff. And I don't want I'm going to mark where we're going to sew the pleat to before we put the skirt on this dress. So we've got that, we've got that, we've got that. Now we're going to move on to the collar. And if I didn't cut my front apart, I thought I cut the front apart and used it as scratch tape. So now I'm going to put my shoulders together, and I'm going to trace this collar that I kind of penciled on onto a new piece of paper. So now I'm going to line this up. And I am going to put this collar that I kind of drew. And I'm going to use a ruler here in a minute and make it look really nice. And it's nice to know in your collar where your shoulder seam is. So I mark the shoulder. So now, so we've got our shoulder, the front of our collar, the back of our collar, and we've got the curvy part of our collar. And I want the back of this to really stand up. So as I work my way around, to the back, I'm going to gradually come further out in the line that I traced. Because I know the more that I make it stand up, the more collar I actually need. So this is going to be on the fold, my center back. Here's my shoulder and my center front. That's got to be Amtrak. This Holland, yeah, that can't be a Metro train. We had friends visit today from Omaha, and they took the Amtrak train. It was only 3 hours late leaving Omaha. That's pretty good. Then, if you remember from last week, to make the collar on my dress stand up, I'm going to just start slicing into it. And you'll find, like the book will say, put 2 slices here or put 2 slices there. You will limit yourself if you don't feel comfortable in straying from what the book says. Because all of this stuff is just ideas and principles. And then your patterning success comes from using the idea and then elaborating on it. So as I go to the back, I'm folding over more and more and more of my slices. So the more I overlap, the higher the back of my collar will be. And just buy a lot of tape on Amazon.
That is Amtrak.
It is Amtrak. So I'm overlapping a lot in the back. I wonder if I can stick this on the girl. So well, you can see it here when I bend it in my hand. So when I bend this around, even though it's paper, you can already see that the only way it's going to work is if the collar stands up. And you can already see just by bending it around, you can already see the roll line that we're going to have in our collar on our lovely 1940s dress. Questions?
Light bulbs.
Light bulbs. Now let's make a princess seam without cutting apart the rest of the pattern. Before we make our princess seam, we're going to make a lasso facing for the front. So our yoke, we would cut two fashions out of our yoke. And you could cut this on the bias if you want diamonds in the back, like if it was a gingham dress or a plaid dress, or you can cut it straight across. A lot of men's shirts or Western shirts are cut with the yoke in the back on the bias because it gives you more room for your shoulders. But before I monkey more with my front, I want to make my facing. So this dress isn't going to be lined, but where her buttons are and her collar is going to be faced. And I'm going to make a lassoed facing. So I shouldn't have cut that. So I just cut her front end, and then I am going to put my back yoke on. And there's a way to sew this where you don't need a back facing, where you hook the collar into the back yoke. It's just a little bit tricky. So this, you'll see here in a second why this is called a lassoed facing. So now I'm going to take another curved ruler. And it's up to me how wide my facing is, because I'm the designer now. And I am just going to mark the shape that I want my facing to be. I'm going to just keep blending my curve together. And I'm going to mark my shoulder. So now you can see why it gets this name. Because when it goes around the neck and the back, it looks like a lawsuit or a toilet seat cover. It looks more like a toilet seat cover. So that's my facing now. And since I'm going to be nice to whoever is sewing this, now we're getting real high tech. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple notches into, so the nice thing, so what I'm doing now is I've lined it up so I know everything will match perfectly. Okay? I don't, those probably don't show, but I just used a notcher. You can get them at the vet store or Amazon. So now we have to make a princess seam for the front. So in blue, I kind of penciled on my princess seam line, but now I'm going to actually take a curved ruler and commit to one. So the blue line just gives me an idea, and I'm going to put in a notch right there. In fact, I can even fold that in half and put in my notch with my notcher right now, so no one can argue whether it lined up. Although, if you bought the Imperial bodice pattern, there's one notch by the waist that is in the wrong spot. It's because I had a drink. I'm admitting guilt here. Now this dart that we don't want in our side front, I'm going to just cut the dart and sew it together with tape. Okay, I'm going to start putting some of my grain lines on. My grain line in the front is actually the center front. Then my grain line on my side front is perpendicular to the waist. And something like this usually isn't cut on the bias, so we're not cutting this on the bias. So now you'll put your grain line in. So we have the front of our dress is done. The back of our dress is done. We should have made her a cute little sleeve. She doesn't get one. We have our facing. We have our collar. We have our back yoke. Now it's time to jam the skirt onto this. Everybody's still with me? That's what Madonna says.
Light bulb.
Are you with me? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is fill in this hole with some paper from when we made our skirt. We have this gap here. Every night before I go to bed, I think I buy a case of Scotch tape because I think we must be out. And now we have so much tape. It's out of control. But now that it all will live in one location,
Yeah.
I won't have night sweats about not having enough tape. So now I am going to, before I cut this sucker apart, I am going to see how does my front actually fit on this, and do I need to true it up a little bit? Do I need to solve any problems? So I'm not going to put the edge of my button lap to my skirt. I'm going to put my center front to my center front, because we have to add a button lap on this later. So I'm going to put that to there, and then I'm going to put my side front to there, and Lord have mercy, it matches perfectly because I measured pretty good. And I measured pretty well. So now I'm going to make the front of my skirt with a center front piece and the side front piece. So let me mark that this is my side front.
Do you guys have any final questions?
Yes, start thinking of them. So now what I'm going to do is I want my seams to match all the way up to the waist. So I already know where I want my seam to be. And I am going to angle my front at a nice angle. And a lot of this stuff comes too from looking in books. Look in books and see what stuff looks like. So I'm going to put myself a couple notches. And I'm going to say that I want flare below the hip, but I don't want to add flare to my center front. I want my front to be kind of flat. So my center front is done other thin. I'm not going to add it, but I need to add a 1/2 inch along my front for my buttons, because this is going to close the whole way down the front. So now I want to add this flare to my side front. So I'm going to cut it up to her hip, and I'm going to add the same amount of flare in my side front, side back, and center back. So I'm going to put, I cut a T, and I'm going to just add 2-3 inches of flare, kind of balanced across her side front piece. So I'd fill this in with paper, right? If I'd spend the class filling stuff in with paper, we'd still be on day 1. But you guys are all brilliant, and that makes sense. So other than my button lap, we are now done with the front of the skirt. And we'll look at all these pieces one more time before we're totally done. Now we've got to do the back of our skirt, which I have right here. So I will fill this chunk in with paper, otherwise this gets kind of hard to see. So you fill this all in. I'm down to the wire. I have seconds left. Are people typing their last questions?
5:29. Yes.
I'll finish.
I have one question.
Okay, yeah, you can answer.
The princess seam curved into the armhole. What are other places, best places for final fit to put them?
Anywhere you want. It can curve up, it can curve down. Because like the princess seam just goes back to manipulating and moving darts. So as long as the original dart you patterned was on track, you can put the princess seam anywhere and it won't change the fit. Okay, now I'm going to put my back to my back. And you know what? So I added a seam, a side front seam to the front of my skirt because I have a seam in the front of my costume, my dress. But in the back, there's no reason to add a seam down the side back. So I am going to have a waist seam because of this dart or the pleat. Or actually, you know what's even a little more gourmet? Let's tape the waist together. We will have a pleat and a center back seam, but no side back seam. Yeah, another question.
Regarding the princess seam.
Yeah.
Will it be too bulky in the shoulder? Because it was for them, but it could be a seamstress error.
Oh, no, it shouldn't be bulky in the shoulder. I mean, the shoulder's no different than jamming it into your armpit. To me. It shouldn't be bulky. Unless you picked bulky fabrics. Or so bulky. So now I'm going to add some swing to the back of my skirt. So I'm going to slice this up again about to the hip. And I added 3 inches in the front, side front, so I'm going to actually add 6 inches. So it would be like had I added into the center back and side back. And then we're ready for the very last questions. So this you're going to fill in with paper, right? And the sky's the limit. When you're patterning, you're the designer of your pattern. And you can put seams anywhere you want them. So let's look at it one last time. We have the back of our dress, which we're going to cut 2 pieces. We're going to fill this in. We have a beautiful pleat, because it's pretty. And then we have a yoke in the back. Then and you could cut a facing for the arm. Then in the front of our dress, we have a center front, a side front. We have a lasso facing to finish the front off. We're going to add a 1/2 inch of button lap down our center front. We have a side front that we added some swing into. So really, you could even tape some of these other spots together if you wanted. And then we have a collar.
Are the back 2 pieces both with the pleat section?
Yeah, it's symmetrical. Look, and I'm just seeing that I did what I told everybody not to do. And I went over to the button lap. So this 1/2 inch here, I'm adding to here. And now we're golden. Give and take. I did that on purpose. Last questions? That's pretty good for a dress in 27 minutes. I think so.
Look here.
I know, I like to look at myself on the screen. It's like a TV show. Any last questions?
Anyone?
That's it for patterning. But with
Mind blown.
all this stuff, you should just be able to make any pattern ever. And then I think in a month or two, we might do patterning where we do a little more like make a welt pocket. Here's like a basic sewn hat. Here's lining a vest. You know, where we'll just do one single class and cover maybe 4 things that you just to see some more stuff so that it becomes more second nature. But we're not sure yet.
Someone asked, how about a grading class?
That is very complicated to people who aren't naturally gifted with it. So if you already think, like we can do a class on like slightly adjusting sizes, but grading is a whole, you know, I've worked with lots of different people that grade stuff, and some of them it's like so frustrating, and some people just get it. So if you try it, yeah. But you can make a pattern in every size now. So that, I mean, that's grading. Grading is making a pattern in each size, basically.
Any other questions?
We'll make a video of the shop on Friday. It's going to be completely
I
different.
think it'll be done.
I'm so excited. Then we'll sew something. Got to finish a pageant dress. I hope I know where it is.
I know where it is.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.